Hi. Welcome in,
Hi.
everyone. Welcome in.
Hello.
It's good to see you all here today. We are here with the Red Army. The Red Army is here with Dr. Bair. You may
Right,
know him.
we're the Red Army.
Yeah,
That's us.
we're
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
Yeah.
the Red Army. Yeah, we're here with Dr. Bair, who you may know from Twitter.
Do you still have him muted?
Yeah, he is still muted.
Let the man speak.
Wait, but how do I unmute everybody? I think he has to unmute himself.
There he goes.
Okay, I unmuted myself. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for having me on the show. The hottest new show on the internet.
No.
Yes, world.
Yes, it is.
The Red Army is rising.
That's right.
Let's go.
Okay, so yeah, we're just really interested in like your whole thing, Doctor. You, what do you do for a living?
Well, I teach economics at Riverside City College, Southern Cali, and I have done that. Let's see, off and on for the last 20 years, and I went to grad school. I wanted to be an economist. I struggle a lot with that, because economists are the most uncool people on the planet, So I didn't identify with that. I was like, I study economics. And then I remember the first time somebody said, well, that person's an economist. And I was like, you're talking about a student. That's an economist? I was like, that's what I've been doing? I'm an economist now. Oh, my God. And it took me a while to, I grappled with that because I was like, I'm the most uncool person ever, and
I just don't think you were hanging out in the right circle. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you guys laugh now, but this was a long time ago, and it's so. But I was just fascinated with it. I wanted to understand society, and the problem that I had studying economics is that it sucks. It's boring, it's abstract, and it gives you basically a feeling. It's hard to put your finger on, like unless you have developed some kind of good ideology to understand the world, right? Like it's hard to put your finger exactly on, or at least it was for me, like when I was first encountering these ideas as an undergraduate. It's hard to put your finger on like exactly what's wrong with it. Like what's wrong, but you don't exactly know why, and that just kind of weighs on you. You're like, shit, and because it's a sort of highly built up like theoretical apparatus, like there's like, thousands and thousands of books and articles and whatever that the field generates all the time, right? And like that's hard for even like professionals to keep up with, right? Like you can only keep up with a little bit of the field, and I don't know, I think it's sort of like an intimidating edifice. And I was like, okay, well, I damn it, I said I was gonna be an econ major, and I'm gonna see that through, even though it's the worst. It's the worst. That's like my least favorite thing to study out of all my topics, right? Out of all the things I study. And then I found I took a course in Marxism. They actually had that, Marxian economics. They had that because I went to the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, which had back in the 70s, like remade a lot in response to massive student protests. They like remade their whole econ department. And they said, this is part of our effort to become the Berkeley of the East. And, that was like that was their phrase, They wanted to really build up the state university system. And that meant getting good professors that the students liked, and the students hated econ, even back in the 70s, right? But there was like this hot, young group of Marxists. You guys can relate to that. Look who I'm talking to. And everyone was like, damn, this is the next big thing. And they came out of elite universities also. I have to mention that, because academia is an extremely, elite, like hierarchical environment, like that's just the truth about it, and that sucks. But anyway, so, like occasionally the elite part of academia will produce Marxists. I mean, like anybody can get radicalized, right? Like even the children of the wealthy who, mostly go to elite schools, right? And that's what had happened, And so there was like these 5 Marxists that all came to the program at the same time. And they were the ones who ended up becoming my advisors were Richard Wolff, who many of you guys know, and Stephen Resnick, who's now passed away. And then there was Sam Bowles and Herb Gintis and Rick Edwards. Anyway, this is the ancient history now. But this like made this program into something very unique that you didn't find, which was, people who are actually educated in this tradition and were teaching courses that took it seriously instead of what you usually find, which is people who are totally uneducated about anything related to history of socialism. And they just repeat, kind of buzzword. They repeat like PragerU level discourse in the elite college classroom. It's not fact-based in the slightest. And it's not even the theme, like they don't even take it seriously enough to study socialism, It's a joke. But this is one of the few places where they actually took it seriously. And I was just lucky enough to kind of stumble on it by accident. And then I was like, oh, yes, this is what I came to economics for. This, right? I knew like maybe a little bit about Marxism before that. But, it just had this vibe in academia like, well, does anyone still take this seriously?
Unviable, right?
Or just, oh, that's so old. Like at the time, it was like nobody wanted to define themselves. Nobody wanted to be like, I'm a this, like you wanted to be like, oh yes, let me take a little from this and a little from that. And, you couldn't possibly understand my ideology. It's far too complex, like that. Right. And so like, because I was into Marxism, people started being like, well, you're a very traditional Marxist like this, right? With that put down energy, you're a very orthodox Marxist. And I was like, the fuck is this? Because that's that. And they're meeting that like in a negative way, like, oh, like you're not a very creative thinker or whatever the fuck, like that. Anyway, that's just, I mean, I'm skipping around a little bit. This is like when I got to grad school, but this is really like what motivated me to study economics. And economics has its own particular way of, kicking the shit out of you and like making you turn into some other major, and that is by making you learn a lot of math and statistics, I mean, way more than any other social science. And I was okay at math. But I never loved it. I took calculus and stuff in high school, and they were like, you got to take 2 semesters of calculus plus linear algebra plus statistics plus another statistics. And I was like, the hell is this? And the intermediate courses are supposed to be so hard, right? And I took them, and I was like, I could have done this in high school, like I didn't need 2 semesters of college calculus for this. Like it felt like they just waste your time, like did any of the math? I mean, I'm not like regretful that I studied that. It was good, I guess, I definitely learned calculus better, but it wasn't like so important like for me to study that for a solid year, to like understand economic theory. That's bullshit, like, and that's the kind of bullshit that like every grad student in economics goes through, right? And this is like what sorts the field out. This is what filters out a lot of interesting people, like a lot of people who are interested in studying society more broadly, studying society organically, like how Marxism teaches you to do it, right? Like everything is connected to everything else, There's nothing that's prima facie less important, because I mean, this is how I understand dialectical materialism, right? Marxists like to emphasize, the material conditions, right? Because it's a correction from the legacy of German idealism, right? That, the ideal was too strong. Marx was like, well, you got to do the material, like this is his kind of like correction to Hegel. But, I think the broad focus is everything matters. Everything is connected to everything, right? And, like this is also what the Marxist tradition has emphasized since then, right? Like you can't just focus on one thing to create the revolution. You got to focus on everything, right? It's a team effort, So I'm gonna pause there for a sec.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you a question. Does anybody have a question? Because I definitely have a few questions, but I'll ask one and
You
then I'll
start
pass
off,
it on.
Sal. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have to study Milton Friedman?
Milton Friedman has one classic book that you kind of have to read. I mean, so first of all, the way to answer this question is to say that the field is not really organized around like you might think. Like it's not really organized around like you have to read this text exactly. It's more organized around you have to understand this math. You know,
Really?
like could you get through grad school without ever reading, say, Adam Smith? Sure, no problem. Absolutely, you can. Right? Like it's only you would only read those texts. I mean, if you were going to study the history of economic thought, which is like a niche course in grad school, a lot of grad schools don't even offer it. If you're going to take that, then you're going to read Adam Smith. Absolutely, right? And you might read even some Marx. Probably, I don't know. It depends on your instructor. But they don't have this like great books approach in economics. They have a much more of like a kind of these are the technical and mathematical tools that we think are going to lead to the truth, and so therefore you must master that. Do your math homework. Don't like read all these old texts. And it was weird. I remember I had arguments with my professors about this. I was like, we would love to know what y'all think the great books are in economics. And basically the committee that I was on absolutely refused to do that. Right? They were like, I'm not going to choose a book. I would choose Euler's theorem. This is one of my professors said this. And I'm like, huh. Like I really did not anticipate that. And then somebody was like, well, I would say the Bible. And I was like, this is crazy.
Oh my God.
Like some of you guys
economics.
are Marxists. Boy, is nobody going to say Das Kapital? Like, what the hell? It was weird.
Yeah, actually, Lenin talks about that in the first fucking page of State and Revolution. It's like, the bourgeois scholars are all now Marxists. Don't laugh. Is that what he says?
I laugh every time.
Right? I do laugh every time.
I think he calls them social chauvinists.
Oh, does he say that? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it says something about being taught, or yeah. But if you guys have questions, you can go.
Because there's like things that come into fashion academically, right? Like, and Marxism is one of those things that, it's like periodically comes into fashion, or it's fashionable in certain areas, or, if you're going to talk about certain things, then, okay, oh yes, we have to talk about class. And if you're going to talk about class, then you've got to talk about Marx, right? Because come on, So Marx has, definitely cast a long shadow on academia, but that doesn't mean that people take the entire thing, like it means that people use the name of Marx, but they don't necessarily construct their analysis around that. They don't construct their paradigm. They don't like try to really figure out like, well, what is this? It's a hugely important philosophy of Marxism, right? Dialectical materialism, that thing that you grapple with and struggle with and try to figure out what the fuck this is, right? I mean, like how often do people really do that? Like, well, it's rarer, because academia, it's like this is the buzzwords. It's like, how do people really get into the substance? Do they like read these texts with that kind of focus? It's actually kind of rare to see, weirdly enough, because what you learn is like, you need to be able to drop names, like famous people, like, oh, I know so-and-so, I know so-and-so. Oh, that's like this in this book, right? That's like that, right? And you don't have to know that much about books to like name drop books, to name drop authors,
Yeah.
You're like Hobbesian this and, Lacanian that and whatever, like you sound smart, but I don't know. I hope I don't sound too bitter about academia. I'm just like,
No,
I'm
it's
trying
fine.
to describe it as I see it,
Perfect.
To me, a lot of my coming to term, like becoming familiar with Marxism involves, I think, especially growing up in America, knocking down a lot of the foundational walls that your education up to that point has built up. Would you say you experienced that when you were taught it in in an academic area? Because like I'm self-taught in all that I know about Marxism, so I'm interested as to what being taught Marxism from an American university is like.
Yeah, I know, it's a trip. I think it's like academia, the general vibe is like, we're going to present stuff to you for you to consider. I don't know, like law school or something, right? Like it's all just arguments, It's not like somebody's not presenting it to you like, look, here's what I believe and here's what I know based on what I've experienced, like that. That's not academia, that's how ordinary people talk, let's say, right? Like academia is like, well, this view is based on the blah, 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 right? Here's its lineage, here's its, and so that's definitely more like how I learned Marxism, like here's the kind of the big ideas, here's, how they influenced Marx, right? Here's what sort of the ideas are, and then here's to compare it to other aspects of economic thought, it's not very connected to like, it's not at all connected to like a revolutionary movement, it's not connected. It's on an idea level,
Definitely. Yeah. It seems like a dispassionate analysis, kind of just
a lot of times,
looking at how this works. So would you say you received this kind of, I guess, like tertiary perspective of Marxism, of let's just look at this through this lens and analyze that? I've learned about tons of ideologies, throughout school, and I've never chased any of them. Like, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, well, I guess it just seemed like it made the most sense. I don't know, like, maybe I didn't, I don't think I understood. Like, I didn't understand, obviously micro and macro. I didn't understand what they were saying in terms of a big picture analysis, like I think Marxism has that more, because it's basically saying, like, its message is, pretty simple to understand, right? Like, hey, society's based on brutal exploitation, and we'd all be better off if we could get rid of that, right? We'd be better off if we could throw that yoke off and run society in a way that, helps the ordinary person, right? I mean, and why not, right? Like, why don't we move on from these kinds of exploitation like we did with slavery, right? I mean, we've moved on. We agree that is no way to organize society. It doesn't matter, right? It's a pure moral perspective. So yeah, I don't know, that helped me make sense of it, because like when I was learning about, basically like what you learn most economic theory, free markets are good and that makes society perfect. I was like, get the fuck out of here. Like, why should I should believe that because of some proofs, like because of, like it's so bloodless. It's so
you've been outside before. You've walked past homeless people.
Like, let me explain the weather mathematically. He's like, well, you could just go outside. And then it's like, it just has and I don't know, it's strange that way. And you're encouraged to be a theoretician. You're not encouraged to be like, but like, okay, what is socialism? Or, like, what is that, right? Like, we try to create communism. Nobody knows what the fuck that is. And we managed to overturn, power. We would take power in some society. Then what? Like, I mean, that's the point where Marx and Engels start to become sketchier and sketchier, right? Because why? Because they never did that. Like, I mean, how can you really comment on something that you've never done? I mean, like, the most you can offer is kind of a sketch, which they did, right? I mean, the civil war in France, right? The Communist Manifesto, they give you sketches, principles of communism. They give you some sketches, but how helpful is that really going to be once you've won, right? I mean, like, you're going to have to make your own path. There's no two ways about that. And you just are not encouraged to like study that and get into because you have to really get into the weeds, you have to start talking about policy, and then how do you assess policy? And like, it's heavy, I mean, like, I know, cause like we do this shit all the time on Twitter, like we basically learn policy, learn history, learn context, and then go through a ruthless process of group criticism over that, you know,
Mhm.
and like see what stands up out of that, you know. But there's something good about that because, you know, that is actually, I think, much closer to the heart of Marxism than it is to say, oh, you should learn this from some fucking expert with a white beard or some shit, you know, like even if they have a really cool white beard, you know, like it's still, that's not the model, right? Learn from authority figures. What the heck, you know, like that's not the model, you know.
Mhm.
So I feel like those are sort of the contradictions that Marxism exists within the academy, you know. A lot of, you know, like my mentors in Marxism, you know, Richard Wolff and whatever, you know, he's getting some flack right now. I see that, you know.
From
Um,
Brog.
yeah, you know,
A little bit. A little bit.
and I think it's, you know, there's going to be tensions like this, right? Like, first of all, no, the movement can't look for some kind of ideal leader, right? Like, I mean, that's, I don't know, maybe people emerge organically or something, right? But I think, you know, you're not looking for a sage, you know. It's like we're all figuring this out together. It has to be like that, you know, because like what's the material conditions of life for professors is very different than you guys. I mean, it is very different from, you know, the average, let's say, right? Like, it's a good job, you know, and that leads many people to be like, well, maybe capitalism ain't so bad, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, you know, if you're disconnected from the material conditions of the average person, you know, that's a problem, right?
Mhm.
So PG has a question. They say, isn't academia another way for the ruling class to keep their power, universities in particular?
Well, I think the short answer is yes. You know, we look at like what stuff gets funded, you know. How does money go into academia? Well, I mean, academia is more corporate now than it was in the past, you know. I mean, they've figured out a lot of different linkages. They always had some of these, but I feel like they now have a lot more, you know. Everything from, you know, sponsored fundraising and that kind of shit, you know, like where you have the, you know, corporate sponsor studio, you know, stadium or whatever, you know, or like, you know, the whole like sports programs. I mean, these are like business friendly cash cow kind of sweetheart programs, right? There's a lot of that shit in academia. But then if we look at just, you know, what kinds of things are funded, you know, does your research agenda draw outside money, you know? And that's a huge filter, right? Because, you know, like, let's say you want to study how to bring about proletarian revolution, you know, like, okay, well, good luck finding funding for that, right? And why do you need funding? Well, you know, if you're gonna produce a lot of intellectual content, you need to kind of farm that out, right? There's like an academic serfdom bit, right, where, you know, the grad students and research assistants, you know, do the bulk of the like collection and analysis of data, and then, you know, you sort of put some finishing touches on it, right? This is the only way you're going to produce a lot of articles, a lot of books, you know, like enough work to like sway the field, let's say, right? And this is like what a lot of professors care about. So, you know, I think you look at like, well, who's giving out endowed chairs, you know, like where, you know, this is like where an outside organization pays for the professor's salary, you know, like they fucking professor, right? Basically, you know, like, are they going to have a word on the hiring of that person for their endowed chair? You're damn right they are, you know, like, and are they going to hire their supports hiring a Marxist or something, right? Like, you know, if you have those views, there's going to be certain filters you're just not going to get through, you know. And so, okay, that means your choices are more limited, right? Like, I can say for myself, coming out of UMass Amherst, there's no way I'm going to get a job, even though, you know, like, I did well there in the ways that matter. You know, I had, you know, powerful allies, you know, Resnick and Wolf, well known in academia, which is what you need, right? Is that going to get me a job at Harvard or Yale or Stanford? Don't make me laugh, right? I mean, no fucking way. Are you kidding me? Stanford, where do they hire from? Yale, you know? Like that's how it works, right? And if you're in a lower shelf, fuck you, like it's not. That's just the way it is. So I'm not sure if I'm still answering the question now, or if I'm just on a different thing riffing, but
It's interesting.
Is it part of the establishment? Yeah, I mean, it is the establishment in a lot of ways. Everything has contradictions. There's always space for other stuff there, right? And there is other stuff. There is anti-establishment stuff in academia, but there's moments of it. There's a little bit of it, like it's not. I mean, what the right says, or what reactionaries say about that, communists run academia is just utter and complete bullshit. Like communists have, been more or less purged, more or less. Capitalism is always radicalizes, right? So there's always a production of communists, but there aren't many, not many.
Okay, so there's another question from the chat. And they ask, I have a semester of economics I have to take in my high school. Any tips on making it through?
It's hard for me to give tips when I don't know much about the person. Like I could offer mundane tips, like make sure your math skills are good, right? But like am I looking like, should I comment on ideologically? I don't know. Like, are you a communist who wants to be like, oh, I don't want to be brainwashed? That's a good. I don't know. I'm just speculating. It's like what you learn. Mainstream economics is from the perspective of the rich. I mean, that's like, not to sugarcoat it. It's like, let's look at capitalism and the development of capitalism from those who really benefited from the development of capitalism. Like who loves free markets? Well, those with a lot of disposable income to purchase things in free markets. Those are the ones who love it, right? Because look at all the choices when you're a wealthy consumer, right? What if it's destroying your livelihood? Then how do you feel about free markets, right? Like, what if it throw you out of work because maybe you spun wool into yarn by hand, as many people did, right, to supplement their income in rural England, during the development of capitalism. Well, those people are out of a job. I mean, the spinning jenny, right? I mean, like some of the very first textile equipment, mass production equipment, you lowered the price of yarn so much that you couldn't possibly spin it by hand and make a living. I mean, yeah, you could. You spend 2 days spinning it to get half a day's income, right? Like, so it's economically non-viable. I think, like all of economic theory is written to uplift capitalism, either to say the free market version of it is the best kind, or the government regulated flavor, that's the best kind, right? I mean, like, you never presented really with the idea seriously that both of these are shit,
Mm-hmm.
Yet, so it's like your choice is already, it's like you put your blinders on, Well, your field's been limited too much.
Ooh, Von Wall has a question. You want to read it, Frog? Do you have the chat up, Frog? You want to read Von Wall's?
I do. I don't see it. Was this a while ago?
No, it's just
No,
now.
it's the most recent one.
It's, yeah, large. Here, I can repost it.
I'd say D.
Yeah. These.
I don't know. I don't know how to say that. Okay.
Die Siegen Von Wall.
Let's see. Yeah, okay, however you say that. It's for Dr. Bair. Did you find a lot of regional expectations or preferences, either in your academic study or later job searching? To be specific, your comment on Ivies hiring professors from other Ivies. I found in the South at least a kind of competing preference over top schools within the Southeast over or on par with nationally recognized schools.
I'm not sure what the question is actually. Did I find, is it like I want to be in certain parts of the country, or are certain parts of the country better schools? I'm not sure what
I think so. They live in the southeast, and here a lot of the bias towards hiring within academia is just based on like you hire from the places around you and everything. So they're asking if you've encountered any of that in academia.
You know where that is operative, as far as I can tell, is at the community college level. But these days everyone does a national search, and a national search is basically a global search, right? So everybody is searching. I mean, you're probably going to, if you were educated in the United States has a solid academic job market. So that's probably where you're going to be looking. But, if you are willing to consider internationally, it does broaden your net, right? I mean, there's more things that you can apply to. Like when I'd left academia for 5 years. Guys, I'm like, I don't know if this joke is funny, but I'm like, I've left academia so much. I'm like academia's abusive boyfriend, I'm like, I leave and then I'm like, baby, I've changed, take me back, And all right, it's not funny, but because I had like gotten my first job. I have tenure now, and it's my third time, like having that. And I went through feeling a lot of survivor guilt about that, because I'm like, like how many chances does this dude get? Like there's thousands of adjuncts out there, who would love to have a full-time position, Anyway, yeah. I forget now what the hell I was saying, but I
actually have a question.
Yeah.
So do you have to like censor yourself at all in your profession, or watch what you say regarding historical socialism, and how has it affected your career in any way since you blew up on Twitter with all your defense of Stalin?
Has it affected my career? Well, I do have tenure, and we have a very strong faculty union at RCC, and I was active in that. I'm not like an office holder right now, but I used to be the treasurer of our union. I was kind of one of the insiders, and it was helpful because I got to know a lot of the power players and the administration and so on. And those relationships definitely make me feel better, because like, is it possible to get a tenured professor fired? Of course it is. Absolutely. There's no question it is. Like tenure is not the like bulletproof suit that people think it is, like it just gives you a modicum of job security in the sense that, you're not like, I don't know, like Amazon or whatever, where they're like, we're going to fire 10% of y'all every year or whatever, like it's not that environment. But you can absolutely be fired. But so I did, when that viral tweet happened, where Stalin was trending and my name was attached to it. I do have a screenshot of that. It's very precious to me that happened. When that happened, I did make some calls. I called the vice president of our union. I called the president of the union. I called a board of trustee member that I had a hand in helping to elect. So I think I'd feel a lot worse if I didn't have any of those connections. I'd feel like, well, I hope they don't fucking come after me. I mean, I still feel like that. Nobody important has deigned to do it. Thus far. But it didn't cause a problem like somebody wrote something down officially or something, like there wasn't any of that. And I can tell to my colleagues, like I have some friends of, other faculty members and stuff. And I'm like, here's what happened to me during the pandemic. Hit them with the Fox News article, that'll be like.
Yeah, so what was that like?
Because for those who don't know, I was featured in Fox News, and then this was part of the like crossover from Twitter to like the mainstream media, where they're like, "Oh my God, look, this is blowing up on Twitter. Let's write an article about it." They did reach out to me, but I totally missed it because I had gotten deluged by like just like tons and tons of DMs and notifications, and I was like, whoa, Twitter's unusable because I literally can't scroll to the top of the notifications because there's so many coming in, you know, like, and people writing the same dumbass comments 15,000 times, you know, like, I don't know, I never read them all, you know, like, I don't go backwards.
100 million dead Vuvuzela.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna read a few of these, and then fuck, you know, like, I'm not here to do that kind of homework. Fuck that, you know, like, I'll just double down on what I was saying instead. You know, I will write new tweets.
Always.
For that poor gasoline on the flames, which, you know, I mean, yeah, that was my response.
You know, I bet, you know, Fox News was punching the air that day. Like, look, Marxist professors right there.
I know.
Stalin.
They must have loved
that
that.
narrative to be true so badly, right? Like, you know, they were like salivating at that. But I felt like the guy who wrote the article was actually like a decent enough guy. Like, when I was reading the article, I was like, they didn't actually do that bad of a job. I mean, like, relative to Fox, they mostly kind of just reported, here's what happened, right? And I was like, okay, I think you know, because the reporter then said, well, I'd love to do an interview with you. And I'm like, should I be interviewed by, you know, like, it's one thing for them to just take a public thing and write a story about it. But like, if I'm interviewed, it's new content, you know, and they're just like, I was like, oh, should I do that? You know, and I was on vacation at the time, but I was writing back and forth with that reporter and saying, you know, I'll do an interview with you. Let me know, whatever. But we never end up doing it. And it's sort of like, I think they moved on, you know, like they have other stories. So I don't know, maybe it'll come up again. Who knows? But I did get like the interview that is just out now that's kind of been getting a lot of comments. This one with this guy, Patrick Bet David. You know, that's a pretty big channel. I think they have 3 million subscribers or something like that. And I got that, you know, because of that viral thing, you know, and that guy's sort of always looking for like, oh, here's the, you know, the hot new Marxist, right? I mean, next time it'll be one of you guys.
Somebody asked, that is a question directed towards chat. Okay. I'd be interested if you have the answer to this question, which is, what percentage of the population do you estimate agrees that communism is the best plan? You have a crystal ball over there, Doctor?
Yeah, didn't you know Dr. Bair could read everybody's
The answer to that is 99%. You know, 99%. Because, you know, there is going to be a small percentage that is so well served by the current system, right? I mean, like, this is the bourgeoisie, you know, like, maybe the bourgeoisie is 1% or so of the United States. I think that's a decent enough thumbnail, you know. I did a whole thread on this, and I was like, at 50 tweets or something, and then I was like, why did I write all this, you know? Like, I ended up in the same ass place that I started with, you know. Like, I just thought it'd be interesting to explore, you know, like, well, because we argue about this, right? Like, what's working class? What's capitalist class, right? What are the boundaries around this? You know, like, are you a capitalist if you're basically just a simp, you know, and you're like, oh yes, hustle, gig yourself out, you know, like all this kind of thing, right? Like, well, you don't have any capital. Does that make you a capitalist? I mean, like, come on, yeah. So I think everyone is a communist, you know, like, that is the natural state in our hearts, you know, like, I mean, like, what, that we shouldn't share with one another? That we should be like, you starve, you die just because the fucking circumstances mean that you don't have the money to buy food or have housing? Fuck that, you know, like, ask any kid, you know, any kid with a heart, right? Like, looks around and is like, mom, why is that person sleeping there? You know, they have a house, right? Like, it's the most natural thing in the world. Society beats us out of it. It beats it out of us.
It conditioned us to not think what we really want. You know, we really want to, you know, be working together for the betterment of everybody, but, you know, we get propagandized out of it.
And we have all these structures that aren't even propaganda, but it's like, it's just how our lives are built, you know, like everyone has their own little apartment, right? I mean, like, so individualistic, right? Like that's not even ideological. It's like architectural or something, you know. But like we don't have any public spaces, you know. We don't, you know, people are lonely. It's hard to meet people because we've underinvested. We've starved our public life. I mean, I don't know, like, you guys, if you guys have been there or even just look at pictures, right, like of the Soviet era and the massive investment that they made in like every kind of public infrastructure you can think of, you know, from like sports facilities, pools, parks, gardens. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, right? Like, and these things improve our lives. They make it, I don't know, like it changes the nature of things in a subtle way, you know?
It makes it a community.
Yeah, yeah. Community becomes easier in that situation rather than, you know, you're spending an hour to commute to wherever, you know? That's another box that you're by yourself in. I don't know, like, these are things I think a lot about Southern California. You know, like Southern California has all this in spades. It's like America squared down here, you know?
Yeah.
All right.
The question though, is that?
I think you sufficiently answered the question. Yes, definitely. We got another question. I lost who asked, but a human, presumably, asks if you've ever had to confront any of your students, they say conservative or liberal students that have gotten mad by what you're teaching. Yeah, so why don't you take that?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a very confrontational style, I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm just so damn intimidating that no one dares to step me. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's rare.
That's it. Yeah.
It's rare that it's rare, but I remember it when it happens, you know. I think also like my classroom style is that I do a lot of lecturing and because like, I don't know, I mean, I use excuses like the field is so rigid, has such rigid things that you have to cover, you know, like, so, and anyway, I don't, I have a much more liberal arts style in the classroom, you know, like here's this idea, right? I'm not the fire breathing ideologue. You know, I swear a lot less in the classroom than I do in these interviews. So I have a different style in the classroom. But I did have this student when I was teaching my political economy course, and this is the course where I feel the most free to teach, you know, actual Marxism and about actual socialism. So because it doesn't, you know, it's not one of the like bread and butter courses that you have all these rules about. So, you know, so I teach Marx, I teach Mao, I have them read Stalin, you know, like I have them read Lenin, you know, these are, and even that, right? Like even just being like, hey, you guys should read Stalin. I mean, if I just said that over the mic, like in our faculty meeting, you know, or whatever, I don't know, like in front of 400 faculty members at RCC, there'd be a lot of, I don't know, wailing, gnashing of teeth, gasping, shocked expressions, right? Like, I don't know. It's just, it's like that's a boundary that you don't cross. And so it's, I'm trying to answer the question, but I feel like I've gone way off track now. What was the question again?
If you've ever basically had a confrontation with students.
Okay, so I had this one student in the class, right, who was smart and like questioned one of my statistics in an early lecture, and you know, I said, you know, the United States life expectancy is actually going down, right? That's an amazing thing for an, you know, like rich country in the industrialized core, and they said, well, you know, isn't it true that life expectancy for this subcategory, right, has gone up? And I'm like, well, okay, but that's a subcategory. I was talking about the overall, you know, like it was that kind of thing. But then it turns out that this student was like a real like Trump supporter, and even loved what's the Trump kid? I guess it's Donald Trump Jr., right? The dark-haired, you know, loser son.
Don Jr. Yeah, that's Don Boy.
Don Jr. Right.
Isn't the dark-haired one? Is that right?
Yeah, I
No,
think
the
so.
other one is the blonde one that nobody cares
Blonde
about.
one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Don
Nobody. Right?
And then there's Bair,
Darko
which
was
everyone
trying
loves.
to like have his own book career and stuff too. And anyway, so he had a
Yes.
book that was out around that time, and she was like, I want to do my project, and this is what I'm going to do it on. And it was like Donald Trump Jr.'s book and stuff. And like, you know, like you're in the class with the text that I described, right? I mean, it's a serious academic class, you know? And I'm like, so you want to write your research paper, and these are your sources and stuff. Like, I'm like, you know, okay, I don't want to like totally give you so much rope that you hang yourself, but you know, like this is a significant part of your grade, right? Like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so we had like kind of low intensity conflict like that. And a lot of times she would like take in like half my lecture and then just pick up and just walk out right in the middle of the class, right? And it's a small class, like it had 30 students or something like this. So that's not like real conflict, I don't think. It's just somebody who was like pissed. And I was like, why on earth are you taking this class? You know, like, I mean, I didn't say that because it's like, oh, you know, it's community college. Anyone can take any class. Dude, we take everybody, you know, like, but I'm like, why are you putting yourself through it? You hate it, you know, like, and then the student didn't do the work, and I end up, you know, having to fail them, you know, because they didn't like, I don't know, they wrote some nonsense on the final or something, you know. And so I was like, oh my God, you know, like this student is going to complain to high heaven about me. And I just wonder, like, maybe they did. I don't know. I never heard anything of it.
Of the Marxist professor that intentionally failed the conservative student.
Academia isn't very customer centric, you know, like
No.
it's not, right? Like it's like, oh, you didn't like your class? Well, sorry, fuck you, you know, like it's not, they're not like, oh, how can we help your experience to be better next time, sir? You know, like they don't really give a fuck, you know, like, so I don't know, maybe that student complained, maybe they didn't, you know, like they have pretty like expansive rules at RCC. Like if you fail a class, it's actually better for you in some ways because then you can retake it and it's not, the grade gets replaced. It doesn't like lower your GPA.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway.
Community college is good.
In California, it's good. California has invested a lot in the community college system, and there's good people, but like I guess to circle back to the whole like regional thing, they do seem to kind of care. They like to have people from the community if they can or nearby or whatever. I had a very promising interview at East Los Angeles College, which is like this, you know, urban, you know, like it's not that far, right? East Los Angeles, urban community college, and they liked me. I was in the president's office for an interview, which is good, you know, like, you know, if you got to that stage, you're in a short list, maybe 3 or something. And I think I had somebody who was oppositional toward me because I just was not, you know, like from the community, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they wanted that. They wanted somebody from the community. So I don't know. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes community colleges can be a little bit anti-intellectual, like where they're not like, yes, we want the absolute best person. They're like, no, we want somebody with, you know, who's a lower level type of scholar who can relate to our lower level students. And you can see it becomes kind of condescending, right? Like,
yeah,
your students are dumbasses, and that's why we want kind of dumbass professors, you know, like,
yeah.
I think it's fucking patronizing, you know, like there aren't levels like this, you know, like there's just education, you know, like that's what there is, you know, and there's not like, oh, you're at baby level because you're poor and, you know, you're not at Harvard. Fuck that, you know, like, I mean, Harvard gives you a lot of fucking privileges, you know, like, so I grew up in Boston, so Harvard was like the big deal, you know, that was like the place, you know, if you were into school and a nerd, you know, Harvard, right? So that was me as a young person. I mean, obviously I'm still a huge nerd, you guys, but somehow I'm now cool. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, I had a friend who went to Harvard. I didn't get in, you know, like I had a checkered academic career. I didn't always get good grades in high school and stuff, and that ended up keeping me out of elite academia. But you know what? It's good. Fuck that. You know, like it's good. So But I had a friend who went to Harvard, and he said, you know, the dirty secret about Harvard is that Harvard is much easier than you think. You know, like if they let you into Harvard, you have a 99% chance of graduating from Harvard. That's their graduation rate, right? And why is it so high? Because if you get in and don't graduate, that means the admissions committee is wrong. And the admissions committee is never fucking wrong. You know, like, and he was totally serious. He's like, that's how it is. They will baby you through it. They will get you past that course. Like, if your professor wants to fail somebody at Harvard, even wants to give them a D, they can do that. But you know what's going to happen next? They're going to need a call from the dean. You know? Call from the dean. Do you think I got a call from the dean when I failed that student? The dean does not give a fuck. I could fail everybody, and I'll get 0 calls. You know? Well, that's harder, right? Like, and everyone knows this, right? Like, I mean, if you give somebody a C at Harvard, I mean, that you just taught G.W. Bush or somebody that dumb, right? Like, you know, a C means you know, there's great inflation there, right? And that's not true elsewhere. So I don't know. I feel like the dirty secret of academia is that it's elitist is not a secret, right? But that it's in some ways easier at the elite level. You know, because there's more hand-holding. They do treat you like a kind of customer, like a valued customer, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They do that, and the students themselves treat themselves that way, you know? Like a student confidently comes into your office at an elite school. You're like, Professor so-and-so, I need to talk to you about such and such, right? Like, you know? And I try to convey the entitlement, you know? But there's something that's good about that, right? Because I mean, shouldn't you feel like at least a little bit entitled to like some attention from your fucking professor at school, right? Like, I mean, it's not a bad attitude to have, you know, but like my community college students aren't like that. They're like this. They're like, you know, excuse me, sir, can I?
Yeah.
You know, like it's my office hours, you know, like that's how it's a different kind of vibe, you know. They're not like, okay, I've got something I need to discuss with you, like that. Like, they're like, I deserve nothing, and I expect to get nothing, and you know, like that.
Yeah,
so that's harder. That's a harder environment, you know. Like you don't even feel like you can deserve to be there, you know. That's like, might that affect like your ability to finish school, you know? And nobody gives a fuck if you fail. Like, it's harder at, you know, and then you have to work and all the other structural things that determine this. I think about things like this because like our graduation rate is like 25% or something, right? And you know, it just reflects the very different like structural forces that are operative.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a question about your children, and then I've got a question about theory from V in Africa. I saw your question, V, and it was very good. I'm going to ask it. But first up, I think this is from Must Be the Hero. Dr. Bair, what are your kids' relationship with Marxism? What's it like to raise kids in the USA as a Marxist, if you feel comfortable going into that?
I don't know what my kids' relationship to that is. I did post a painting that my elder child is an artist, and they did this painting, and it was like this cheesy like sunset, and over it said fuck capitalism. And so obviously it's
That's
gorgeous, beautiful work of art.
Yeah.
And I think they relate to, like, you know, like we hang out and look at memes together, you know, and we laugh over memes, and you know, some of them are maybe political. Sometimes I have to explain it to them, which they fucking hate, obviously. Who likes a joke that has to be explained? You know, but like I show them stuff. I mean, I think they sort of have watched me you know, become Twitter famous or whatever, and they're like interested in that. You know, I'll be like, you know,
you have some clout with your family.
What?
You have some clout with your family. Now your kids.
Respect me now. Nice. I mean, no, they see what I'm doing, and then they'll be like, I'm on my phone or whatever in the early morning, and they'll be like, put their head out the window and be like, "What you doing, pops?" And I'm like, "Nothing." I'm like, "What you doing, pops?" "Fine, I'm lighting up Twitter. All right, that's what I'm doing." They just think that's funny. I don't know, like that. They'll tell me a joke or something, and I'll be like, "That's going on Twitter," you know, and they'll be like, "How's my joke doing?" Later. I mean, but what does it say about them as communists or Marxists? I don't know, you know, like they are at us. I don't like push them. I don't like, you know, Marxist training camp now. Get up, read State and Revolution. You know, like I'm not that structured as a parent. You know, the only thing that we made them do is, I don't know if people are fans or whatever, but like I posted a bunch of pictures earlier this summer of me like with some concrete rubble and stuff, and you know. Just because we were doing this job, and I don't know, I thought it'd be fun to. So I did a whole series of these concrete-related selfies, and the kids were involved in that. That was like the thing that they had to do, and we called it labor camp. It was actually the second summer that they've had to do labor camp. So this is like Labor Camp 2, the sequel. We call it the Gulag, and this is why it was so funny that people were like, you know, trying to get up on my business with these tweets and being like, Dr. Gulag and whatever. And I'm like, you guys fucking clowns. You know, like, because you try to criticize somebody because they do physical labor or because they don't do physical labor, you know, like, what the fuck, you know, like, I just thought it's funny, you know, like you guys don't think I'm part of the working class and I'm a lily white academic who, you know, like I never would I strain myself to lift a thing, of course, you know, like, that's not me, right? I mean, like, and I'm not trying to cast shade. I'm just, you know, whatever. Social media is for sharing, right? Like, I share some stuff, and you know, like I had one where I was like laying back on this thing like this.
I remember.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. And then I looked at it later, and I'm like, my entire jumpsuit is like fucking sweat stained. Like I had sweat stain. It's like from my elbow to like my belly button, basically.
Like
I was just acting like, oh yeah, it was really uncomfortable on that rubble too. So like, I don't know. They hate labor camp. Obviously, anyone who's a parent knows that they do not like that sort of thing. Yeah. But I sat them down and I said, look, there's only one thing worse than labor camp, okay? And that's those fucking kids who have never had to do any labor ever in their life. They're the fucking worst. You know them, don't you? You know? And they were like, that was the one thing they listened to. They were like, yeah, those bitches are the worst. So, I mean, they did it because we made them do it. But I don't know. Like, I think it is kind of important to like share things. I mean, it's important to share labor. It's important to be like, we have these responsibilities, you know, and I don't know. It's a struggle, right? Because you're taught to like raise children in this super individualistic, super catering way, you know, like they're the customer, you know, what can I do for you, sir? Oh, you don't like that exact flavor of nugget, even though you liked that chicken nugget yesterday. How can I assist? You know, like that's how you're sort of trained to be as a parent, you know, and it sucks, right?
Wait, is that not how we're supposed to be?
I don't know. That's what I feel like. I mean,
my son's like, give me grapes. And I'm like, okay, we're doing this.
We had that yesterday. Yeah. You know, he demanded grapes.
No, grapes. Feel these.
We just had grapes like 5 minutes ago. He ate them, and now he needs like more grapes. And if you don't get him the grapes, then I will be sorry.
Yeah. Weird.
There's different approaches, you know?
Yeah.
No, that's, yeah.
Doctor, if you don't mind going into some theory ground, we have people asking some stuff about that.
Okay.
So I hope you're ready. First one, this is from V. V asks, having studied Marxist-Leninist states, there seems to be a problem of succession. Many Marxist-Leninist leaders die in office, and there often seems to be a period of struggle after their deaths. What do you think causes this problem? And do you think there's a solution to this problem? I take it the problem being the period of struggle and not dying. I don't think you have a solution to that.
Have you just tried not dying?
Never die. Be like the specter of communism, never die. I mean, I think we're talking about Stalin and Mao largely. I mean, you know, these are hugely important revolutionary figures who were able to bridge the gap. Oh, I mean, I guess we could add Fidel as well. I mean, you know, these are like hugely important revolutionary figures. They managed to bridge the gap between being a successful revolutionary and then governing, right? Like, and some of them don't bridge that gap, right? Like Lenin. Lenin doesn't get to have much time actually governing, you know? So Lenin then is like one of those pure figures in Marxism, right? Like Gramsci, you know? What a pure figure Gramsci is, you know? A martyr. Never was he touched by the contradictions of power, you know? Like,
same with Rosa.
Power, then you're going to do things that people don't like. I mean,
what a lovely point. Yeah,
it's 100% that's going to happen, you know? Like, but if you never have that, then everyone can love you, you know, who likes your ideas. I don't know. So I think, you know, like Stalin is very interesting because Stalin is like in a lot of ways the protege of Lenin, right? And looks to Lenin as his mentor, as his you know, theoretical, you know, kind of master, you know, like, I mean, just idolizes Lenin, you know. But it's also kind of functional because Lenin is this martyr figure that everyone loves, you know. So it makes a lot of sense for Stalin to be like, this is what Lenin was saying, right? Like, and to ground, you know, his version of Marxism and not call it Stalinism or some bullshit, right? Call it Marxism, Leninism, you know? So, you know, that's like very important in terms of the history of Marxism, right? I mean, Stalin puts like is a huge influence in that in terms of everyone's thinking. And I think really kind of forges this idea that isn't really as present in Marx and Engels, which is that, you know, there's this transition that we're in, right? What do you call this, right? I mean, Marx and Engels, lower phase of communism, right? Like they kind of use the socialism and communism more or less interchangeably, and you know, okay, there's these lower phases. And Stalin does a different thing, right? Stalin says, you know, we are trying to develop socialism, and that's going to be something different, right? There's socialism, and then there's communism. Communism is the kind of, right? He relabels this, you know. And this is, and the tradition follows in this because of the importance of Stalin, you know. Now, I'm not saying that this is good or bad. I'm just saying it's a modification of sorts, right? That is like, okay, look, we're in a different place and the tradition has to evolve, right? Because we're in a different place. Are you guys smiling because the comments are lighting up right now? I can't see.
Yeah. They're saying Ahab. All haze are bad.
Oh, all right. It's mostly Hayes-related abuse. Okay,
Yeah.
I can deal with that.
Yeah.
I will soldier on.
Oh, we need you to say Ahab. We just need you to say it.
Ahab.
That's too lacking of context for me.
Yes.
I mean, I think we could say the same thing for Mao. You know, like Mao bridges the gap between the revolutionary tradition and then the governing tradition. Now, I think, you know, and Stalin is in a little bit of a unique. I mean, Stalin's obviously an important part of the Bolshevik Revolution as well, but is young enough to then be able to have like this long kind of term in power. I guess the first thing to examine in that question is it a problem? You know, like, is it a problem to have somebody with a long term in power? Like, is that automatically bad? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking, you know, like, we've been told it's bad.
Right.
But look who told us, you know?
Right.
The fucking man told us, right? Like, that's not good. That's a dictatorship.
They're critical
blah, blah, blah.
about that too. Like Angela Merkel's been in power for what, 15, 20 years or something.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah, oh, that's perfectly fine because it's democracy, you know, like, what is this bullshit? You know, like, I think we need to reinterrogate that, and we need to do a better job of looking at that, you know, like, what is the term of power? What does it mean? Is that itself the thing we want to look at? I don't think it is, right? Because I'm a big believer in results, you know, like, what are the results? Like if some kind of, you know, alien came to Earth and that alien lived 1,000 years and was like, you know, if you don't share and cooperate, I'll fucking kill you, you know? And then we had communism because of some alien dictator. But then, like, okay, I know I'm spinning a yarn here, but imagine if we didn't have starvation and, you know, warfare and this ecocidal destruction of, you know, the earth that we have now, right? Like, so we have a evil communist alien dictator. That's the negative. But we have finally now have a global society based on sharing and cooperation where everyone gets a decent life. I mean, I don't mean to be super controversial, you guys, but I would say maybe we should think about taking that. You know, maybe that might be better than what we have now. You know,
Certainly.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying that to push the issue. I'm not saying that's what. Oh yeah, that's what Dr. Bair wants for everybody. No, you know, like I'm just saying as a kind of counterfactual. Let's not accept the idea that it's necessarily bad. Let's look at the results. What are people's lives like, you know? And I mean, with Stalin, I think the absolute fact of the matter is that Stalin defended socialism at a very, very critical juncture. And without that leadership, it would have absolutely been destroyed by the Nazis. There's just no doubt about that. So, you know, the entire capitalist world kind of looked the other way as the Nazis created the most powerful army that had ever been seen up to that point, right?
Yeah.
Look, as long as you're going to go east with that, you know, you're fine. You're good, right? Destroy socialism, fine, you know? So I don't know. There's a second part to this question, right? Like, how do we fix it or something? So I said, basically, is it a problem? How do we fix it? You know,
Dictatorship of the extraterrestrial.
People are saying Dr. Bair Posada Stark.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a question: is if you could insert one text as required reading for the American public school curriculum, what would it be?
Oh, the one text that's required. Well, I would rather have people read Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, than almost anything that they read about free trade or whatever, right? Like, I mean, like, so I don't know if you guys have to take econ in. I know this is never a question about econ exactly, but in California, you have to take econ in high school. And so the students kind of come in, like a lot of my community college students, you know, they've had that. They're sort of like, oh, supply and demand or whatever, right? Like, and, you know, you get basically taught theory of comparative advantage and stuff like this, right? This is the building blocks of the argument for free trade. But then you kind of go off thinking that free trade is somehow like what runs the world or something. Bullshit. It is not, you know, like that's not true at all. You know, like free trade, we have like unbelievable economic and power asymmetries between nations when it comes to trade, right? Like, and that affects everything about their economic development. You know, it imposes incredible limits on what countries can do, right? And if they start going in a socialist direction, of course, you have, you know, the threat of action from the United States, right? Military action, or just secretly funded coup, or just, you know, funding the opposition, or, you know, whatever, right? All of the zillion dirty tricks that the government does. I've completely forgotten what the damn question was, so I don't know if I answered it or not.
I think you did. It was about.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one book you would add to the
American
school curriculum.
It's hard to just choose one. I just think that would give you a better understanding of global trade than anything in modern economics.
Yeah.
Free trade by forcing any opposition into extremely predatory loans. Yes.
That, yeah, I mean, right. It's like a global payday lending scheme or something. Like, you know, trap you in debt and then keep you there.
I've been muted.
Shout
I was
out to
trying to bridge
IMF.
that smoothly. But all right, we have another question here, Doctor. I'm not sure how much insight you'll have into this, but we'll give it a shot. What can I do if there are no real socialist organizations in my area to join? I want to learn and grow in real life, not just online.
Yep. Well, the easiest way to do that is just to find one person who's interested and just, like invite them to have a conversation, like invite to let's read something together, I mean, like, I think that's the easiest way to start that. And by having those conversations, maybe it leads to something else. I think every organization started someplace, so if there isn't something near you, maybe it'd be a good idea to start something, and
Dr. Bair said, start your own cadre, folks. Let's go.
Yeah, start your own cadre. I mean, it's good to be connected to an overall organization of some sort, right?
Yeah.
And that might help you. That might help you find somebody, But I would just say, start with one person, A lot of people are lonely. Hey, maybe it's your chance to ask that special somebody to read the most romantic text of all time.
State and
Manifesto.
Revolution. Oh.
State and Revolution. Okay. I'll accept that as an answer.
Gomer says, when are you guys going to hang out?
Dunking on Kotsky together over a candlelit dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Gomer wants to know when you and him are gonna hang out sometime.
Yes, let's hang out, Gomer. That'd be fun. Well, I messaged him a little while ago, and I said we should have a party in LA. We're gonna have some kind of communist house party.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, but he also said keep it a secret and don't put it out there because we don't want chuds. Chuds, if you're watching, fuck you. Don't come to our party. Invitation only. I don't know how hard my hate followers follow me. Like, do they go everywhere? I don't know. I got a few thousand of them though from the Stalin thing. They now hang around like an albatross around my neck.
I think it was after not too long after the Stalin tweet when you were actually added into the group chat we're all in.
Yeah, that's probably what made me cool enough to break through to another level.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're not supposed to tell the secrets.
Yeah, how many did the Stalin thing, like, that's when I found out about you, was the Stalin thing. Was it before that? Like, what were you up to? Were you big on Twitter before that, or was it that?
Well, I had another thing that was kind of big or important or whatever, which I think was maybe
you go viral often.
I've had a few things. I haven't had things like that, but yeah, I know. Hubba hubba. I wrote Tommy tweets. Well, I'll tell you. I don't know. No, I did have some ones that went viral around the situation in Xinjiang. Like, I started researching this and I started writing a book on it, which I need to get back to. And, so I kind of like went into like deep dive mode, and I produced a bunch of tweet threads that were just like kind of out of my writing and research process. And I just thought, yeah, let's put this out here. I'm excited. I'm learning. I'm excited to kind of share what I'm learning. Right. So, and some of those like really have taken off, and that got me a lot of followers. I've made a lot of great connections with Chinese folks, with Indian folks, and that's been helpful for me, because I think one of the things that happens is you just get it's just easy to get isolated, within your country even, like how often do you really talk or exchange or whatever, right? You exchange in any way with people from other parts of the world. And I mean, I think that's one of the valuable things about Twitter. So I felt like I did get some flack around that too. I did get people that were contacting my department chair and whatever, and they were like, "Well, did you know that Dr. Bair is a genocide denialist?" I mean, like that's what people are going to say if you say, look, there isn't evidence of any kind of genocide in Xinjiang or at any other point in Chinese history under the BRC. There's just no evidence. And the case that's been made is completely full of holes. That did get some attention because I think there was a kind of a need for that at the time. This narrative was coming out, and there was a need to question it, you know. And like there were two other people who kind of became well known at around the same time for that. One was Roderick Day, who I think some of you guys know of, and the other one was June, who is you know, that's his handle. I don't know if you guys know him. Anyway, you know, like, so at around that time, you know, there was and then I discovered there were other people who were writing, you know, and I'm in a chat with some of them. They've been very helpful actually, because, you know, this process of like taking in data and getting sources and getting analysis and like comparing notes on that it's just so helpful to have like a research group, you know, of people who like have the technical skills to do this, you know, and have the interest in it, you know, and so that was a kind of a point, you know. I was blocked by Adrian Zenz at some point in there. I don't know when exactly. I never even interacted with him. You know?
I've been blocked by Adrian too. Okay.
So. Yeah, he's heavy on the block button.
Yeah.
I understand, you know, like it's fine to block people. I'm not mad about it, Adrian. I'm not mad.
We know you're watching this right now.
You can look at my tweets for an alt if you want. It's fine.
Well, while we're on the topic of China and Xinjiang, Must Be the Hero asks, would you mind giving us a quick rundown of what some of the research you're familiar with brought out?
Yeah, sure. So I wrote a thread about this, and you know, if you guys are interested in some of my longer stuff, I created a tribute account just for that called Threads of Dr. Bair. So you can look for that. I wish I could say it was created by a fan. That's not true. It was created by me. But I can find my tweets.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'd be like, I wrote this long ass thing about where the hell is it, you know? And so I have like.
Have you met? Do you know what a bookmark is?
I never.
Marks when he cites himself in capital.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. I'll teach you later.
Anyway, I think, you know, when I look at Xinjiang, I'm looking at it in the context of other historical genocides, right? And these produce very reliable things. I mean, like you don't kill a mass of people, you know, along ethnic lines without first of all causing a massive refugee crisis, right? Like you typically cause a big disruption to the economy, you know, because I mean, you know, if you're rounding up people in the kind of numbers that have been talked about, it just is extremely implausible to also say, well, the region has 8% per year economic growth. You know, you just don't see that, right? I mean, like you don't see people in positions of significant power and authority, like the governor, right? I mean, like, or you could just look all throughout the local government, the provincial government. Uyghurs are very highly represented in that, right? They're very highly represented in the Communist Party. You don't see that, right? Like, I mean, did Jews have that kind of representation in Nazi Germany? I mean, like, come on, right? The first thing that you do is start excluding the group, right? Especially from if they had positions of power, they get purged, you know, like, I mean, that's the first thing that happens, you know, like, so we have something that doesn't behave in terms of the macro level statistics, that doesn't behave like the population is trying to be controlled. Well, the population is in fact rapidly growing, you know, like, so what growth rate should it be growing at? You know, like it's growing at 1.9%, which is high, right? That's high population growth. Are you going to tell me you think it should be growing at 4%? Like, I mean, maybe, but what the hell? You know, you don't have strongly growing populations if there's a genocide. Like, what is the basis here? You know, like, so when you examine the case falls apart. You know, like it's based on the sheer weight of all the sources, right? Like, but the problem is it's a clusterfuck of everyone citing everyone else within a circle. You know, the New York Times citing the Washington Post, you know, citing that fucking Mehdi Hassan article in, what was that from? Maybe The Intercept. They were sort of an influential early source here. And then you see all of these think tank connections, right? I mean, like I don't think you start with, like what a lot of critics said is they said there's hidden ulterior motives, which is fine, that's true. But I think you have to examine the case like, well, how do you know there's a genocide happening, right? How do you know? I mean, it's a fair question, right? So one of my people I look to, who's in my research cadre here, wrote about this, and he wrote about the report that came out that was presented to the UN about these allegations of genocide in Myanmar, and said, look at how different the style is. Look at how different the evidence gathering is. Look at how different the approach is, right? Because this is a situation where there's real evidence, and they treat it very carefully, like they treat it like legal experts. And then they say, this is the stuff that's litigatable, right? You don't see any of that with Xinjiang. You see a kind of rumor mill that throws off shit against the wall, and then it's like, what sticks, right? I mean, that's the opposite of, because the courtrooms don't accept that kind of thing, right? I mean, like, you have to establish things, right? You have to produce, real evidence, right? And that when you look at Xinjiang, you don't see that. And you see all sorts of contrary evidence, like you see evidence that the Uyghur people have been flourishing, right? I mean, like, and it's quite an incredible record, like, so to now say, oh, well, their population growth rate dropped, genocide. What the fuck is that? I mean, that's an argument from somebody who never took a statistics class, and yet it's endlessly repeated by the media. So I just, like that makes me mad on a couple of levels, like that makes me mad as an educator. And I'm like, look, you guys want to make it seem like the population has decreased by a third when what's happening is the population growth rate has decreased. That's not the same fucking thing, you morons. Like, that makes me mad as a former statistics professor, but it also makes me mad because I don't like to see propaganda against China, China is an enemy of U.S. imperialism, right? U.S. imperialism is a fucking cancer in the world, like a country that can stand up to it. And whatever your feelings might be about China, I know that's a kind of flashpoint within Marxist and communist groups. Whatever your position is, it doesn't matter, right? You could say it's an effective enemy to the United States in terms of, or just a blockage, right? Like, it's a place the United States doesn't control. And the United States fucking despises that, right? Like, it hates it. So, like, just on that level, I think we could offer some support, right? And say, whatever the U.S. empire wants, fuck it. No, you need to fight it.
All right, we have another question for Sal from PG, which is, what are those animals behind you?
This is a goldfish. Hello, goldfish. And then there's a loach in there, and then this one is a green terror cichlid, and this one is two little pea puffers.
You just made all those names up.
What is
the
only thing that was
pea
real was
puffer?
a goldfish.
A pea puffer is you guys only
that
need
a real
goldfish.
thing?
Yeah, they're the size of a pea. Yeah, they're really cool.
Oh,
No.
so they're tiny puffer fish?
Yeah.
I'm looking that up. Is it like pea, spelled like pea?
Yeah.
Like a... Oh, it has auto-completed. They're so small.
They're adorable. Here, I'll pull some up on the screen so everyone can see. And then I also have neocardina, which are
those
just
are
little shrimps.
really tiny. What the hell?
Okay, let's see if it'll transition. Oh! And it's transition. There we go.
Whoa.
Okay, so this is a pea puffer. And they are literally the size of a pea.
Oh.
They're so
Wow.
sweet.
They look kind of tasty.
No, don't eat them. They're so small. They're too small. Yeah, so that's
You
just
got a
the one
bunch,
I'll
like a
show
bowl of peas, like some mashed potatoes. I don't know.
it. No. Okay, back on track.
Yeah, I'm looking for more questions, but the chat's giving me nothing. They're off their game right now. It's not unusual for them, but
Davon, those were bloodworms, which is what they eat. I
See,
also feed them scuds. This is actually a fish stream now. Get out. This is why I'm a tanky.
it takes
fish
right in the
tank.
name. Yeah.
I'm a fish tanky. Yes. All right. Somebody else.
Must be the hero asks, you doctor, any good commie media you recommend? Movies/shows.
I don't know if I'm
Detective
the
Comrade was
person
really good. Sorry.
I'm going to quickly come to the limit of my coolness there. I think if I go there, I've already probably exhausted it. I don't know. What I see a lot in like kind of the imaginary is just this kind of like exhaustion, you know, or like this. It's like, oh, when you try to make the world a better place, or you try to like wield power and make things better, you absolutely will fail and make things much, much worse. You know, like I see that theme everywhere. Like wasn't that like the kind of the ending of Game of Thrones? You know, like, I mean, any kind of grand arc that deals with politics in the slightest is going to have that kind of like breaking of the dream or whatever as part of it. That disappointment aspect of it, and I feel like I don't know if that's some kind of hidden message, or if that's just like we're all exhausted because we look at the government and we're like, you fuckers, you know, like, oh, so government can't do anything because look at your entire life, right? Look at everything we know that the government has ever done. What is it? It's all shit, right? Like, it's done, very little of it helps the average person, even though they're constantly fucking saying that that's what they want to do, right? So I feel like it's reflective of that. I don't know, that exhaustion, and we need that. We need to feel like, no, things can get better. You know, like we have problems and we can actually take care of it. You know, like if we act together and in our unified class interests. You know, if we don't, then yeah, no chance. But I don't know. I just see that theme a lot, like in shows that touch on politics. You know, like. I didn't watch this whole show, but I watched the Falcon or whatever that thing, the Winter Soldier.
The Falcon Winter Soldier, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I like the Winter Soldier because of I thought that the Civil War movie was good. It had like, I don't know, but it had this element. You know, you had these basically revolutionary terrorists, right, who had more or less superpowers because of this super serum that Captain America had, right? And how are they depicted, right? Like, well, first of all, they're terrorists, you know, like, so it's like anybody who tries to do anything good that's even slightly outside of the electoral system. And then in the end, it's like fucking Falcon writes a letter to his senator and shit, you know, like be a superhero, kids, like write a letter to your senator, you know.
It really happened.
The other awesome.
Awesome.
The other superhero show I watched was Invincible on Amazon Prime.
It's so good.
That's a great show.
Good.
You know, that was an amazing show. I was very traumatized by it because I was like, holy shit. Talk about, like, if you could punch 600 miles an hour, like, talk about being realistic about what would happen to the human body, you know? Like if you could just put your fist through somebody's torso, you know? Like, they really depict that accurately in a cartoon form, I felt, you know? There's a lot of organ meat that is being displayed in that. So you got to just be down for that.
The end of the first episode was just...
Yeah,
whoa.
It was... I know.
The whole episode, it's like it's going to be some standard superhero show. And then out of nowhere, it just makes a complete turn.
Totally.
Yeah. Some of the most grotesque violence I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was great.
I mean, now I have to watch the show now.
Yeah. No, it was... wow.
And how about the Seth Rogen cameo? You know, did you guys catch that? He played the like Cyclops alien who flies in, and like has a meeting with the kid, you know, on the moon or whatever.
Oh, was that him?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that was, yeah.
Have you seen Comrade Detective?
No.
Oh, it's so good. So good. It's like USSR but detectives.
Okay.
So it's amazing. And the Americans are the bad guys. It's just
Yeah, I saw the first episode of that. I couldn't tell if it was anti-communist or anti-American or trying to do both.
it was
funny.
both, but
The centrist position.
yeah. But I appreciated it because it was the heart. I felt like it's the only thing we have, okay?
Oh, someone asked about Star Trek. Would you consider Star Trek communist?
Yeah, I'm trying to steer the stream away from all this nerd stuff in case there's any cool people left watching. But yeah, they asked some nerd stuff.
We need an
about
Ahab in the chat.
Ahab's in the chat.
Ahab in the chat.
I don't know all that stuff. Do you have any thoughts on Star Trek, Doctor?
Well, I think I definitely mention Star Trek sometimes when I'm talking about this. I think they have, it's hard to see how their society is actually organized, first of all, you know, because most of the time you're just seeing them on a ship, right? And the ship seems to be the same kind of hierarchical environment that we're familiar with, right? Like their ship organization doesn't seem that different from any ship's organization. It's just that they're in space, right? Like other than that, it's pretty similar, but sometimes they hit you between the eyes with these unbelievable things, right? Like Captain Picard, I think, says at one point, he goes, we have money, but we don't work for money. We work for the benefit of humanity, you know, like, and he just hits it point blank like that. And it's like, holy shit. Like, imagine if we could go around saying that because it was true, because it was uncontroversially true. That's a very different society, right? But they don't show us that society. They don't, you know, like, well, what does it look like? What is it like there? I mean, is this utopianism? Sure. You know, but I don't care, you know, like it's a novel or whatever. It's just show. It's a, you know, that's a perfect time for imagination. I would love to see somebody try to envision it, you know, try to imagine it. I mean, it's great that it's sort of there as an idea in the background. It's just too hard to say much further about it, right? Because it's like they don't give us enough. So like, yeah, I want to see Star Trek the home planet or some shit. I don't want them in space in their like hierarchical whatever, you know, like we never see them spending money. We never see them do anything, right? Like, I mean, economically, they don't do much. We know that they have these microwave looking box things where you can put stuff in and tell it to make whatever the hell you want, right? So if they have that, I mean, they're operating at a very different productive level, you know. Although where they get the raw materials for that, I don't know. I had to write an essay on this in college, and I don't think I did a good job with it. I don't remember what I said.
No, just, you know, next Star Trek movie, Star Trek, the economy system.
The economic system, exactly.
Yeah, I gotta be. I'm not too into. I've never got too into Star Trek, but I'm vaguely familiar. But when I hear a lot of people talk about it, they always talk about like the replicator stuff, and it always comes off that the impression that I've heard from other people that they've gotten from Star Trek is they've been able to reach that utopian society because they've overcome scarcity, which is not like that's. Obviously that's not a based show. If that's like, I've heard a lot of people come away with it with that conception, and that rubs me the wrong way, obviously.
I know, because we don't know the history behind that either. We don't. Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
I was just saying their productive forces have increased so far that we can. It's like the whole show is it's like Posadist, if you think about it, right? They have World War III. Everything is destroyed, and they rebuild, and it's basically communism, and then it's, space aliens. It's basically Posadism if you think about it.
Mhm.
Wow.
Oh my god,
I didn't know
is.
that they had a World War III in their like that's part of their universe. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
that's what Posadas wrote too. Is basically, I
Yeah.
haven't read anything he's written, but
they
nuclear
think that, like-
accelerationism.
Yeah.
The rich will be in their bunkers hiding, and then whoever survives will rebuild on the surface without a ruling class and do communism.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I find it definitely suspicious when you have something that is like given to you by, it's like a Deus ex machina kind of thing, a device. Like where did the replicator come from? Like who developed the technology for that, right? Like, because was it capitalists who developed the technology for that? Like, and if they did, wouldn't they have developed it in a way that we are familiar with capitalism developing technologies, right? Like, you develop a technology because you think it's going to be privately profitable, right? Like, and you're going to develop it in a way that is privately profitable, or else you're not going to fucking invest in it, right? Like, so like, why would you create something like a replicator unless you, I mean, I don't know, maybe it got out of control or something, but it's still, there's just too few details that, and then it's like, oh, we have a magic wand that takes away what, labor, the need to produce? Like, I don't know, these are such fundamental human things. It's very hard for me to imagine it,
Yeah.
You never see anybody producing anything in Star Trek, right? They just kind of explore. So I don't know. There must still be labor, right? I mean, because they say we work for the benefit of humanity. They still work. They have the concept of work. I don't know.
That's what I mean when I like it. It's almost as if they've like scrubbed it clean in order to present this utopia, because it's entirely unrecognizable to us. And I think effective propaganda should leave somebody with the impression like, hey, we should do communism, instead of, hey, they figured out scarcity and then they are able to do it. Because the fact that they don't labor, and like, it just seems like, hey, what if things were cool? And it's like, yeah, that would be nice.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still think that Marx presents this compelling kind of, vision in these scattered places where he describes this, right? German ideology and elsewhere, right? Like, that one could be I don't know, a potter in the morning and a poet in the afternoon, and this kind of thing, right? Because it seems like a more human existence where labor doesn't feel like work, because it's just a kind of integrated into your life, right? It's just you do different activities, and some of these you enjoy more than others or something, but like, it's not like, oh, you punch in making pots at fucking 8 a.m. and then you punch out at 6 p.m. or whatever, like, it's not the kind of, I don't know, you remove the exploitation, alienation of a regime that's based on extracting surplus labor, right? So you remove that, and then what is work like? What is life like? I mean, I will be honest, I don't fucking know, because I haven't lived that, I know
really
the kind of work that we all know, like, you show up, you punch the clock, you do your job, and then you get income at the end of it, right? Like, and do you have a say about how the work is done? Not very much, usually, right?
Have you read this book, A World Without Money? This one does a pretty good job of like giving you a little bit more than most texts do. Like, it says, like, imagine clearing a field, right? You can make this one person clear this field in 8 hours, right? Or you could have 40 people come and clean this field. And yeah, there would be a lot more people doing it, but we would have this physical, like, like emotional connection because we're all helping each other. And then the task would get done so much quicker as well. So this is an example of how we would reshape society, not doing things to get things done quicker, or, what would be efficient would be like doing the least harm, right?
Yeah.
I like to think about that.
Finding several things too, like our need for we do have a need to be productive. We have a need to move, right? I mean, like, imagine if you never had to do labor again. You just opened your fucking microwave thing. I always think of it as a microwave, you know, the replicate, whatever it's called, right? Like, you just open that thing. Like, it's
Like
I don't know.
Wally. Seen Wally?
Yeah,
Very
it's
boring.
like, you know, you're plugged in, yeah, into your cubicle, and I don't think that's a good vision for like the healthy human. You know, like, it's better to be like, oh yes, look, like, we're working together, but we're also kind of having a party. I mean, like, if you're doing something for 40 people, it's semi party, right? Like, and then
Yeah.
you hang out afterwards or whatever. Like, well, that sounds fun. You know, like, I would totally go to a party. You know, hey, you know, weed my field for an hour and then let's all hang out and get blasted. I mean, you know, sure, right? Because that gives you something to talk about at the party. You know, like, don't you feel awkward when you're at a party and nobody's doing anything and you don't know who to talk to or something? Like, you know, have an activity at your party, plow a field. I don't know.
That's cool. Love that.
I do not mean that in a dirty way, you guys. Get your.
Do you remember there was an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where it was like a time travel episode, and some like capitalist from the 20th century ends up on the Enterprise, and you know, it's like a fish out of water thing, and like they're like so confused because they don't even understand this concept that he's talking about money and business and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a moment where, yeah, they're like, our society is so different from yours, you know, like, somebody from your primitive society would be a fish out of water, you know, like that. And I don't know, it is funny, like, it just, I still want more. Like, how's the economy organized or something, you know? Like, how can there be no labor? That doesn't make any sense to me, you know? I don't know.
Does somebody want to read Ordog's chat?
No.
No. Who's? Oh, or dogs. Oh, Dr. Asatar Bair at it again. Yeah.
I've had to embrace a lot of things that I didn't see. I do it in order to take ammunition away from my enemies. I didn't have a lot of enemies before, you know? I was basically a peace-loving meditation teacher and economist. But now I have more enemies, and that's good because I also have more friends. And, you know, I think this is part of being more public and whatever. So, yeah, it's funny because, you know, like, I grew up with a weird name, right? Like, so my name is Asatar, and you might think that kids wouldn't understand a weird name, and you'd be right in thinking that. They're not good at understanding that, right? They come up with, you know, like all kinds of names for you, you know? And so, anyway, like, it's not like things like this are not new to me. You know, that was maybe a little bit of a new twist, but, you know, you grow up and you don't spend as much time in schoolyards, and you don't hear as many of those, like, in first grade related.
Twitter is a lot like the schoolyard, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's like, I don't know, like, how are you supposed to handle that? Are you supposed to like get mad and flame out or something? I mean, like, that's not what I'm going to do on Twitter or whatever. Especially if something's funny, I don't mind being the clown, you know? Like, I think the joke is more important. So if someone thinks that I'm funny, then good, you know? Like, come for the jokes and stay for the communism. Or vice versa. I don't know.
69 viewers for Asatar Bair. Oh my god. I know that was Gomer. That was Comrade Gomer.
It's a good question here. Is there any overlap with your meditation teaching and economics teaching? And do you try to get your students to meditate or be interested in that?
Oh.
Like, my students in university, I don't have a lot of crossover there. I don't know. I don't talk much about myself or I certainly don't talk much about my public life. I don't know. Wouldn't it be cheesy if your professor was like, follow me on Twitter, y'all? Like, I don't know. I think that's cheesy. I can't figure out a way to say it that doesn't seem ridiculous. So I don't do that. If people Google me or whatever, sometimes that happens. Um, I do have some followers who were former students. Um, yeah, I don't know. I I think it's a struggle for me actually because I have things that I'm passionate about that are just they're such different things, you know. Like I mean, I have lots of people that I know from meditation settings or spiritual settings that don't know anything about my politics, right? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
and I think well, everyone has that though, right? Like if you get into right, you get into communism, you're likely to be unless you're from a family where that's right, like then you're likely to have different views than your family, you know, like that's a common experience for folks, I think. So um, we often have like different parts of our lives that maybe aren't that well integrated, you know, like do people at work know about your politics? I don't know. Like a lot of people have to hide it, and that sucks, you know. I think it's interesting the way people have responded to me and have been like how are you, you know, like they're just confused. They're like, how are you a communist professor of economics? Like, and what are they saying with that, right? Like, shouldn't you have
Yeah.
been urged long ago? Like, how did you get through the filters that we installed, you know, around academia? um, so I don't know. I'm like, I struggle to integrate it for myself because I'm like, if people are into what I say politically, like, are they also going to see eye to eye with what I say about spirituality or personal development? I don't know. Maybe not. You know, like people disagree with stuff, and that's fine. You know, like um, I think I struggle to like put it all together for myself. You know, because they're different areas, and um, I can say that when I was, you know, I had a 5 year period where I just did meditation and, you know, ran this nonprofit and, you know, whatever. Um, and I definitely talked a lot less about politics, you know, because, you know, you're dealing with a, you know, wealthy group of people who are like have the disposable income to do, you know, meditation retreats and things, right? So, you know, that tempers, you know, like when you have a professional persona, you know, that is based on something else, it's hard to bridge it, you know, or it was for me, I'll say, you know. Um, but of course, all these things go into the mix in terms of like making us who we are, you know, like, I mean, you know, I think everybody has other interests besides politics. I hope you guys do, you know, like that's important, you know. Um, and yeah, maybe you don't have a way of bringing them all together, or maybe you do. I don't know. It can be hard. It can be hard to integrate.
All right, we've been going for 2 hours. I have two more questions here.
Okay, I have to go in a few, but yeah, well, go ahead.
Okay. This one they just asked it twice, and I felt bad because I have it written down, but I haven't asked it yet. So it's just a general theory question from no comrade Quiche. Nope, no Quiche comrade. I know that when social classes are abolished, the state will wither away, leading to communism. But how exactly will social classes be abolished under socialism?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good question.
How exactly?
How exactly?
Okay.
Yeah. You know, so many of these, I'm amazed by some of them because it's like so many things are like, you have that question? Well, so do I. It's a very natural question, and nobody has really the answer, right? Because what we have is, you know, we don't have instances of stateless, moneyless, classless societies to look at that aren't in antiquity, you know, like in the pre-societal phase, maybe we had that, right? But you know, money is a pretty old thing in human civilization. Money is actually older than written history by a lot. So like, you know, these are things that have been part of exploitation is also old, right? Exploitation is probably about as old as society, right? So what would a future society look like? What would it feel like that has gone so much further than anything we've seen, like these first few steps of socialism? What does it look like? I mean, the only honest answer is that we have no idea, you know. We don't know. But I think the secondary answer is we have to create the future that we want together, you know, and we have to be bold enough to do that without knowing exactly what it's going to look like, right? Like, just like the people who struggled and fought and risked to overturn the corrupt feudal aristocracies, right? I mean, you know, like these people did not know what democracy would be like or whatever, right? Like, I mean, they didn't know, you know. This is part of a, you know, it's right, that maybe this isn't the best example, right? But it's motivated by the same kind of idea, right? That a tiny elite running society is just not a good way to organize society. That doesn't fit humanity anymore. Not in the age of education, the age of information, the age of, you know, we have the ability to come together in a way that I mean, just this thing, like I mentioned before, right? Being able to easily exchange views with somebody from a completely different part of the world, right? How many opportunities existed for that 100 years ago? I mean, you know, you could write letters and whatever, right? But so I think the answer really is we have to do this together. I don't know what it will be like. We're all the products of the old, right? I mean, like, how do we create the new? You know, it has to be out of this coming together and then this, you know, well, exchanging points of view and then kind of forging something out of that, right? Forging a point of unity out of that. And I think that's kind of what we're doing, you know. That's why it's important to have a media presence, right? And to have one that's two-way, right? I mean, that's important. Like what we do on social media is very much an interactive thing. You know, this isn't just like broadcast like you're doing a TV ad or something, like, you know, that's old media. This is learn from each other, right? Yeah. I mean, like I learn huge amounts from you all. I mean, I'm not thinking that I know everything. I don't. Guys, if you guys think that, please don't think that about me. Nobody knows everything. There's just too much to know, right? I mean, like we've got to do it together. That's the best answer I can give you.
All right.
Maybe that's a good note for me to sign off, actually, because you have to go.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you so much for joining.
Beautiful answer.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to come back anytime you guys want to hang out. Like I said, the coolest commies on the internet. And, you know, I understand a lot of people don't know that I have a YouTube channel. You should know about that.
We'll throw it in the chat.
Yeah, throw it in the chat. And other than that, I'll see you all on Twitter, I guess.
That sounds good. Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks for coming, Doctor.
Hi, chat. I didn't get to ask your question about his favorite car. I was gonna ask that one next. I'm sorry, chat.
Oh shoot.
Well, that was pretty sweet.
That was. All right, lovelies. This is the time where you plug yourselves.
So much.
You know, you do the stuff. Like...
Yeah.
Okay.
I've made an
It's time
outro
for
screen.
Issa nationalism. Fine, do it. Have your way with the chat.
Hi, Issa. I've made an outro screen for us in the future that'll have all our handles on it, but we are the Red Army. The Sal has been Sal, which is at SAI Kami on Twitter. Reggie has been Reggie, who is at Don't tell me Marine Maoist. I said don't tell me. Marine Maoist. And Frog has been Frog, who's at Cold Empanadas on Twitter. I'm not giving you my handle. Fuck you.
Hayes pipe bomb.
I don't even know. No, it's not. I don't even know if Jeremy's still here, but I'm shouting out my boy Jeremy. What's up?
Oh, finally.
Complain about it again.
Finally.
I love you, boy. I don't even think they're awake, but somebody will have to clip it for him.
So I did a little thing. Do you see the RA? The Red Army aims to explore the works, ideas, and the struggles of the communists who have come before us, and in order to inform our movement today, we aim to combat the popular opportunist bastardization of Marxism, as communists have always done.
Oh, so
I can't
boring.
even read. Yeah, I'm boring. Whatever. But that's what we're here. We're tired. But that's what we stand for. All right.
I wasn't calling you boring. I was calling the writing boring.
No, the writing's good. Hayes wrote it, and he's just sucks. But you know, Ahab in the chat, folks.
Ahab forever.
No, we're leaving. Who are we rating? All right, who's on?
Do you feel
Have y'all
sufficient?
read Capital Chapter 1 yet? We're going to talk about that sometime soon.
When are we doing that? We'll have to talk to Kooks. I don't know.
Chat.
Yeah.
Lennon.
Chat, you're all expected to read it as well. So if you show up and haven't read it, like
We're kicking you out.
You're so fun.
Yeah, kick you out.
Sarah will ban every single one of you who hasn't read it.
Haz is on. Chapo Trap House is on.
Oh, Socialist MMA.
All right, fine. Get
If
one
you
of
want. You're in charge, Sal.
Okay.
Is Nick streaming?
Yeah, that's Nick. Let's see.
Okay. Fine. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We actually get to do an outro because Sal isn't
I didn't
Sal hasn't kicked
close
us
us in
out
the
yet.
teeth.
Okay, but you have like only a few seconds left, so say whatever you want to say. But
Okay, I tolerate you, chat. Bye.
Alright, see you guys again.
I'm the walrus. I'm the walrus.
I am.
I'm the walrus.
I knew Hayes was the Donnie of the group.
I'm the walrus.
Alright.
Holy smokes, Sal's still here. I don't know what to do.